Hey there, my name is Shane Craddock, and this is the Inner Edge podcast, where I share a different take on how to lead and live a sustainable, high performance life. Over the course of different episodes, I'm going to challenge the belief that tension, stress, and struggle are essential to success and creativity. My experience is that there's an easier way, there's a better way, and indeed there's an essential way that we need to explore for the times that we live in. So let's go ahead, let's jump in and explore. Hello there, and welcome to today's episode with me, Shane Craddock. Today we're talking about sleep, and the title is Sleep Trap, the Saboteur Within. All sounds very mysterious. So what's the saboteur within? Well, if you're listening to these podcasts with me for a while, you probably guess what the saboteur within is. And it's very much your inner voice. Now, sleep has become very topical in recent years. We've had actually a couple of guest experts on over the last 18 months about sleep, people who were experts in sleep. Fiona Brennan brought out a book about it. Very interesting. And there's an industry around sleep now. There's sleep coaches, there's sleep books, there's sleep apps. There are meditation audios to help you get to sleep. There are trackers and trackers about trackers. It's huge. But what I want to talk today about in terms of relation to your sleep is maybe something that doesn't get a huge amount of airplay, but I think from my point of view, perhaps is one of the most important variables. And it is that your sleep is hugely affected by your inner voice. And from what I've seen myself, better sleep starts with noticing how your inner voice is talking about sleep. But before you do it, if you wake up in the middle of the night, and then after a night's sleep. And there are, I think, several mental traps around sleep that we can fall into. And I suppose I want to maybe just explore it with you today to see, does it strike a chord with you? Does it resonate? And maybe help you experiment with, I don't know, something that I think when you see it actually is quite profound. It can be quite simple to see it, but also quite profound in its impact once you start to realize, oh, maybe I can make a few changes here. So just to make sure, you could be listening to this or listening to me for the first time, and maybe just very quickly to get us all on the same page. In my world, I know that we all have an inner voice, but I also know that that's not me. The real me is the one that is aware of that inner voice. So in the same way, I'd say, my mind is part of my inner world, but it's not me. My mind is a tool, very valuable, powerful tool. And the voice essentially for me comes from that mind. But if we're not careful, and if we don't realize what I've just said, then we will literally believe everything that inner voice says. It kind of determines our perspective. And once you buy into its perspective, it affects how you feel. So there's a direct link from my point of view in terms of how I feel is directly linked to what I'm thinking. And sometimes, and very often, that thinking is unconscious, as I'm not fully aware that it's even there. So for example, you might be feeling anxious, or you might be feeling stressed, or you might be feeling worried. And you mightn't fully associate that with the thinking about your situation. Very often you say, well, I'm worried because of this, what this person is doing, or a meeting coming up, or something to do with my business or my life or my job. But we don't always think back or reflect on, well, hang on, what's my thinking doing about this? And how is that affecting how I'm feeling? Now, in relation to sleep, I have never really had an issue with my sleep. I've always found it something I never really thought about. It just naturally seemed to have good sleep. But a few years ago, I started to wake up in the middle of the night, usually sometimes around between 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And it wasn't anything to do with, sleep hygiene in terms of your phone, or I would have thought even a busy mind. But I was kind of confused as to why I was waking up. And without really realizing it, I kind of let my inner voice get in on me. And it wasn't until I was chatting with a mentor a few years ago, and it kind of came up casually because I wasn't even really bringing it up as an issue. It kind of came up about sleep. And I just told him, oh yeah, I kind of wake up a bit. And we were talking about it, and I was talking about it like it was a problem. And as I talked about it, I realized I was getting a little bit heavy with it or maybe wound up about it. And they said to me, I often wake up too. Now, this is somebody who I thought would have had perfect sleep, never have had an issue with something like this. And I was really surprised. So I said, oh, wow, I'm surprised. Doesn't it bother you that you wake up? And they just went, no. And that really confused me. I said, well, what do you do? I said, well, sometimes I'll lie there and I'll practice deep breathing. Sometimes I just lie and relax. Sometimes I just say, I'm going to get up, go in, make myself a drink, hot drink, might even watch a movie. You're joking, is what I said. You get up? They said, yeah. Sometimes I even get up and maybe do a bit of work until I feel tired. Then I'll fall back asleep. And I found this perplexing until I started to reflect on it and realize that, oh, my mind was doing the opposite. My mind was making a big issue out of, oh, you've woken up now. And this is the kind of stuff it might say. What if you can't get back to sleep, Shane? You've got to get up in 4 hours' time or 3 hours' time. What if you don't go back to sleep? You're going to be tired for the whole day. The whole day is going to be ruined. And on and on and on. And what I've realized is that most people's inner voices, when it comes to sleep, if there's an issue, they do this too. Or they'll wake up, maybe you fall back to sleep and then you wake up and you get on about your day, but in your mind, your voice is saying, yeah, you didn't get a great night's sleep, so you're not going to be great today. And then that would be the filter that you experience your day through. And the reality, as I discovered, is that humans are amazing when it comes to sleep. We can actually have many, many nights sleep of absolute crap sleep, but still put in a good day's shift, still be on our game. It is amazing what you can do after a bad night's sleep. Any parent with young children will tell you the same thing. Yes, it's great to have sleep. Yes, it's brilliant to have great sleep. Yes, I suppose to be on all cylinders, ideally you'd want to have really good sleep. But thinking about it and getting into your thinking about it, maybe more importantly, very often sabotages you when it comes to sleep. So I kind of tend to think about it now in simple terms as before bed, during sleep. I say before sleep, during sleep, and then after sleep. So, before sleep, without realizing it, I kind of had gotten to the point years ago where I was starting to kind of dread going to sleep because I thought, oh, what if I don't get a good night's sleep? Until I realized, oh, the inner voices come in, it's sabotaging me, it's changing even how I'm looking at my sleep. So now when I'm going to bed, it's just very simply, I will gently picture having a really good night's sleep. I'll use the principle of what I call the projector, which I talk about in my book, The Inner CEO. And I've talked about in other podcasts here. Your mind's like a projector. What you think about, you magnify in your mind, but also you feel. Your mind is the greatest virtual reality system. But what are you playing in it? So you can kind of condition your mind to have a really good night's sleep and relax before you go to sleep. If you wake up, because you can wake up for all sorts of reasons. It could be to do with stress. It could be to do with overthinking. It could be to do with having a busy mind. It could also be to do with eating late. It could also be to do with going to the toilet, or it could just be for whatever reason, at whatever age you're at. Maybe there's hormonal changes. There's all sorts of changes. You get older, men and women. Maybe you just wake up more. But the thing is, when you wake up, what do you do? Now, for me, again, I'll do what my mentor I just kind of come up with my own approach. I can often use shifts. A lot of my clients will use shifts. They told me when they wake up in the middle of the night. That's a tool. I put it in the, we've shared it many times on the podcast and on my mailing list, but I'll put it in the show notes here in case you haven't tried it. It's a very simple, powerful way of actually calming your mind, of settling your mind. It's a great way to practice being in the moment, being in the now. And then if we're talking about after a poor night's sleep, again, it's just to kind of watch what your mind is saying and either drop it or else change the narrative. So instead of it saying, oh, I won't be able to focus today or I'm going to be unproductive, say, no, 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 no. I can still put in a great day even if I'm tired or if I'm not completely firing on all cylinders. It is amazing to me how great a day I can have even if I haven't had a great night's sleep. And I'm sure as you're listening to this, if you think back over your lifetime, you'd have seen the same. It's when we think about it too much or let the voice get into our projector that causes the problem. Now, I think this episode was partly inspired by, I was having a chat with somebody recently, and I'm doing a little bit of work with them, and it came on to sleep, and he said, oh, I never have a problem with sleep. And I said, that's interesting. I said, tell me your approach. And this is always amazes me is that humans are very creative. Like you don't necessarily always have to do a course or even read a book. the natural intelligence inside humans, inside you and me, can very often figure out how to help us. And I just love that. That's my favorite thing because we're so lucky to have it there. But anyway, this guy had never been coached on sleep. I said, tell me what your approach is. He said, oh, well, I'll often go to bed at night. My mind might be busy and I might be thinking about work. If I haven't written down stuff to get it out of my mind onto a page or a notebook, then my mind be busy. But he said, I'll catch it and then I'll just say the word nothing to myself like a mantra, like nothing, 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 nothing. And that's what he would say. And then I'd start to relax a bit and then I would just go off into daydream land. And then when I catch that, I bring it back to nothing, 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 nothing. And I'd almost just do that. And then he said, within minutes, I'd be asleep. Now, what that points to me is the universal feature of your mind, that if you can distract it away from thinking it's causing a problem, then your body and your mind will naturally relax. And in the sleep context, you're giving a chance for your body and your mind to go to sleep. And that's the same as my mentor saying, I just get up and I watch a movie or I drink something hot or I just focus on deep breathing. It's essentially taking their mind off the problem thinking. And in a way, it reminded me of something that I learned myself coming out of depression, moving into a better performance state of mind mode, which was when I was in an extreme version of negative thinking, when I caught it and become aware of it, I just say the word cancel. Cancel. And then sometimes I would just move on to something else. Other times I might stop and think about a positive outcome in relation to what I was doing. Cancel, boom. That's the same thing as what that guy was doing or is doing with nothing, 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 nothing. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily has to work for you because it's just a technique. And not every technique works for everybody. It's more to point to the fact of there's a universal element underneath that, which is distract your mind away from the thinking that's causing a problem. And very often you find a way to reset. And that comes into everything. Just as a side note, I'm thinking of somebody a while back that I met who had one of these, I suppose, watches or tracking watches on their arm. And then I noticed that they had a separate one on their other arm. And when I said to him, why do you have two? He said, oh, I just want to double check my sleep. I said, you're joking me. He said, yeah, I'd like I've got one there. And then the other one, then I just want to double check, make sure they're correct. And to me, that's overdoing it. It's totally overdoing it. And I was chatting to him and I was asking him a question that I've asked a few people who are big into these tracking apps. I'm not saying they're bad. It's just, I think it's a question of what is it doing to your mind? I said, have you ever had the experience where you felt like you woke up and you felt like you had a great night's sleep, and then you looked at your app and it said you didn't have a good night's sleep, that you weren't in REM for the periods of time that it would recommend? And he said, yeah, I have had that actually. And I said, how do you feel after that? He said, well, a couple of times it's happened. Usually I'd wake up feeling good and I look at my watch or my app and it says, no, not good. And I wouldn't feel so hot about my day. And you see, that's the mind getting in the way of something natural. So it's just something to watch out. What's influencing your thinking? Are you listening to your thinking? And a couple of extra questions for you then to close out. But before I do that, just a little mini plug for me in terms of, I've got a new series coming up called Limitless 2025. It's a web workshop series, live, but also recorded. You can watch it in your own time. But essentially, it's an opportunity to expand your thinking beyond the normal mindset mode that might be used for planning for the year ahead. And a lot of people in my experience do what I call plus 10% planning. They will look at their business or their life and just say, oh, let's just improve it by 10%. But I think very often they're lowballing it in terms of their potential, not just in terms of achievement, but in particularly in terms of their enjoyment, their fulfillment, their sense of purpose, and their sense of aliveness. And there's some details about the program. It starts at the end of November. If you haven't worked with me, this might be the opportunity to do it, because in terms of what you get out of it, it's great value. Anyway, no more about that. I'll put it in the show notes if you're interested. And it's also going to be on my mailing list. So, questions. What about you? So, what is your thinking about sleep? Maybe you don't have any issue, but I guarantee you other people around you do. So if you know anybody who maybe would welcome exploring what I'm talking about here, or being at least turning their attention towards what we're talking about, then maybe share it. But if you have a bad night's sleep, what do you let your mind say about it? Or if you wake up in the middle of the night, what is your mind typically saying? What's your inner approach? Do you distract yourself? Do you get annoyed at yourself? Which is really just paying attention to the mind and what it's saying. Or do you have your own approach like my client shared about the nothing, 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 nothing? Well, what's your approach? I'm sure some of you listening to this will have your own way of just getting back to sleep. Maybe it doesn't bother you. Maybe it does. If you feel inclined, send me an email, Shane@ShaneCraddock with 1D.com, and let me know what you think. So to close out, from my perspective, what I'm saying is our sleep is hugely affected by many things, but don't let your inner voice be one of them. That's it. Ciao for now.